Okay, welcome everybody. Welcome. Okay, let's get started. The sooner we start, the sooner we can all finish and go home. So welcome everybody. We're up to week 8 now, so some good news and some bad news. The good news is the dates for the exam have been announced. I don't know if any of you have checked. The bad news is it's on a public holiday. So I can't remember, I think it's the Monday, June. Anybody know when the public holiday is? 14th of June, that sounds familiar. Yeah, so I think it's, I haven't seen the time, someone let me know, so sorry about that. Apparently Deakin University doesn't care that it's a public holiday, so not much I can do about that. So not too much long to go. We're sort of on the home stretch now. We will be talking about business continuity, supply chain this week, and then next week we're talking about strategy, and then we'll spend a couple of weeks doing some revision, going through some exam questions, past papers, getting you guys to really sort of consolidate your learning. I think one of the things with this course is we cover a huge breadth of topics and information. Okay, let's just have a bit of hush, please. We're covering a large breadth of information, and it's sometimes difficult for some students to knit that all together. So that's what we'll be aiming to do in the last 2 weeks. So definitely come along. I think it'll be worth your while. Today, really, what I want to do is talk about business continuity, supply chain, and it's probably, I think, one of the most interesting areas of risk management, because generally, it's built upon things that have gone wrong. We learn from examples of things that didn't quite work out well. I'm doing a little bit of work for one organisation at the moment, and they've got a data centre, and they had a problem. They were upgrading some hardware on a major system. And when they did that hardware upgrade, the database that was holding all this critical information just locked up and sort of contaminated the database, so they couldn't get into their critical business systems. And of course, then they said, "Oh well, we'll just go get the backups." So they went to get the backups, and then found out that a few months prior, somebody had made a decision not to run the backups because they were taking too long. So, it was one mistake compounded by another mistake, which resulted in a crisis or a catastrophe. And I don't know how much it cost them in the end, but they were out for quite a few days. And it's not just the sort of the money that you lose because you're not being able to run your business. There's these uninsurable losses, these other sort of knock-on effects, the loss of opportunity associated with all the time you're spending trying to put everything back together. You're not out there talking to your customers, finding their needs, refining your products. You're trying to just hang on to the market share that you've got. So that all ties up with business continuity. Business continuity is about what can we do today that will perhaps help protect us in the future should something unexpected happen in the organisation. So it's about identifying critical business processes, the vulnerabilities, the risks associated with those critical processes, and then putting together maybe some basic plans so that when the crisis hits, people have got at least the first idea of how to organise themselves and how to start making things or put things back together. I think. I was thinking about it. I thought, well, perhaps I don't know how much experience you guys have had in industry, but perhaps to bring this sort of issue to life, I want to sort of tell you a story. It's a story about a company that I was working with. I was advising. I was a risk management consultant. This goes back to 1993, and. There was a big poultry company in the UK when I worked over there, and they had a big fire, and it took them probably 3 to 4 years to recover their business from this big fire. So I thought I should have shared the story with you today. Now, the company, I mean, this is sort of all, it's such a long time ago now. It's public information what I'll be talking about. But for those of you who have downloaded the slides or jumped on the internet, downloaded the slides, I'm actually jumping to page 8 or around there, and I've added another little slide in as well. So the company is called Sun Valley Poultry, and back in 1993, my involvement was I was working on behalf of their insurance company, visiting their factory. I probably visited their factory, or they had more than one factory. They had probably about 5 factories. And what I was doing is looking at vulnerable processes within the business. I was looking at critical paths in the business, looking at sort of pinch points, sort of where things could go wrong and cause the greatest impact. This company was it was a privately owned. Well, it was owned by an American corporation at the time called Cargill. Some of you may have come across Cargill operations. It's probably one of the largest private companies in the world. They bought out this company. It was a private company in the UK, Sun Valley Poultry, probably about 3 or 4 years prior to this incident. And they hadn't really brought it up to standard that Cargill has across the world, and that was part of my role, to go in and try and bring it up to standard. But what they did, they had a hatchery, and they used to produce in their hatchery about 1 million chickens a week. So that's a lot of chickens, as you could imagine. 1 million chickens. I don't know if you've ever seen pictures of chickens flying down conveyor belts, but that's what you saw in their hatchery. They had sort of dozens of people checking the sex, throwing them onto one conveyor belt to another, and they'd fly off and land in a box. And they sort them because the male chickens would have different growing rates to the female chickens, and there was also different types of chickens that they were growing. They had some which were for the growing farms, which produced the eggs, and then they hatched those eggs. So that was the growing farm part of the business, or the farming part of the business. And the other part was the, if you like, the meat producing load of chickens. They didn't sell eggs or anything like that. It was just meat producing that they were interested in. So out of the chicks came lots of chickens. And actually, they didn't just do chickens. They did turkeys as well. They had a whole turkey hatchery too. And just as a sort of an interesting story on turkeys, I don't know if I should tell you this, but there was these turkeys are bred to produce so much meat that they can't mate naturally, and so there's actually an artificial insemination program for turkeys. So there's a guy who has to extract the semen from turkeys, and I don't know what his official title was, but one day this big, imagine the big male turkeys, they were absolutely massive. I don't know if you've been to the supermarket and ever got a turkey joint. You know, these things are monsters. And anyway, this turkey got a bit upset, naturally, and he broke his arm. And so, you know, just by flapping his wings, he broke this guy's arm. So he put this workers' compensation claim in for a broken arm. And the insurance company was sort of quite curious when they read that, and sort of, what the hell was this guy doing when he got his arm broken? But anyway, that's another story. So anyway, got all these chickens coming through the process, and so there's all these growing farms out there, and some of you have probably seen pictures of these growing farms. They're very intensively farmed. They had a feed mill producing the feed, which goes into the farms as well. After I can't remember how many weeks, it's probably about 8, 10, 12 weeks. These chickens are ready to be slaughtered, and then they go off to the factory to be processed, and end up as chicken Kiev or McNuggets. They actually this company made all the chicken McNuggets for McDonald's across Europe. So as you can imagine, there was quite a lot of chicken McNuggets coming out of this, and also you've got the chicken patties for your chicken burgers, and there was also over in the UK Marks and Spencer, and they used to make these little ready meals. If you ever, I don't know if you get the supermarkets over here, you can get these pre-packaged meals with a little bit of rice and a bit of curry and these sorts of things, and just heat it up in the microwave. So they used to make these ready meals as well, chicken of course, or turkey, but that's something else they used to make. And they'd also be selling fresh chicken to the supermarket chains as well. And in terms of scale, I think it was around 300,000 chickens per day. I think. So that's more than one a second. So in the processing factory, these chickens hanging on conveyor belts going through these mechanized processes. And it gives another sort of, I don't know how many of you are sort of a bit squeamish, but the turkey processes, they actually they couldn't mechanize, it's like the chicken processing, they could mechanize. So the chickens are about the same size, so they would just sort of go through sort of a machine to kill the chickens. But for the turkeys, there was actually a guy, and his job was to kill the turkeys. He had a very sharp knife, and he'd be cutting the throats of the turkeys. And his job title was killer. So I don't know how he went when he changed jobs and put his CV in and said, "Oh yeah, no, this is my last job. I was killer." So but yeah, so it's an interesting interesting experience, and not for the faint-hearted to go around some of these facilities. So as you can see, this is this is a very high level process flow of what Sun Valley were doing. So you've got the egg farm. So that's sort of part of part of the growing thing where they would collect the eggs, and they had to collect more than a million eggs a week, I think, because some of them wouldn't hatch properly. They would then go into this hatchery, and some of the chicks that they produced would be sold to other poultry farms. So there was an excess of chicks going out into another part of the business. Feed mill producing the food for the growing farms, and also the I guess there was the growing farms and the what was the other one where they produce the eggs, the other farm. So huge operation. Now they would all come into this one factory, with the fresh meat processing. So that's basically the what they call the evisceration process, where it's the slaughtering. Then they would produce. They would produce pretty much whole chickens, whole chilled chickens would come out of that. They would then go to another plant where if they needed to, where they would do deboning, and that's a pretty miserable place if you ever apply for a job in a deboning plant, because your job basically is to cut meat off a cold chicken. So the whole place is really cold and it's wet, and you're standing around with sharp knives, and it's not the most exciting place to work. And they had a high turnover of staff and health and safety issues and all the rest of it. The deboned meat would go into pre-cooked meals, and also we put the coated products. That was your chicken McNuggets and those types of things. And the way that the coated products would be processed, they would start off with the deboned meat. That would be put into these vats, mixed up with a few different spices and other little bits and pieces, and then would go into like tell you how McDonald's nuggets are made now, into like a stamping machine. You might think the little shapes are kind of the shape of little bits of chicken, but that's just the shape of the mould that's to the end of the stamping machine. And I think it's a sort of there's a mixture between sort of light and dark meat. I think it's anyway I can't remember all of that. And then we're going to a huge deep fat fryer. These deep fat fryers, there was probably about 6 of them in this one building. This coated products facility, and they're probably about 30 meters long, full of hot boiling oil, and a conveyor belt, so that the raw product would go on the conveyor belt, go through the deep fat fryer, come out the other end cooked, and then we go into a chilling process, and then go into cold storage and sit there and wait to go to the customer. So that was the process, and it was a great business. They were making plenty of money. They were just doing some deals with McDonald's to do some new trial products. They were talking with Marks and Spencers to extend their range of pre-cooked meals. Looking at expanding, they were expanding into France. They were sort of probably about a third of the way building a factory down in France. And they're also talking about expanding their facilities up in the UK as well. To give you let me see if I can turn on the dot cam. I don't know if any of you. Let's see if we can. Is that focusing? Yeah. Okay. A couple of. Just to give you a feel, I don't know if you've seen inside any of these facilities, these food factories. There's a couple of photos of a tip, one of the kind of factories, what they would look like. So, they're all full of stainless steel and metal, lots of water all over the place. They hose everything down and wash everything down. Lots of sort of hygiene issues. The walls are typically made of metal. Painted metal, and they have like a polystyrene insulation in them to help keep them cool, because they generally like to keep them a bit cooler in these places. And they can spray them down, and it doesn't absorb the water, and it doesn't absorb bacteria and those sorts of things. So this is what one of these factories would look like, and they had a fire. They had a fire in the coated products facility where all the deep fat fryers were. Now they thought, we'd been doing discussion, they thought, well, the highest risk areas are where the deep fat fryers are. Everyone's heard of fat fryer fires and those sorts of things. So they were talking about putting firewalls around these things and sprinkler systems and fire protection systems. But the fire didn't start there. It started in a what they called a defroster unit. So they would receive some frozen products, put it in this giant microwave, and then take it into the process and cook it. And this giant microwave was the one that overheated during a shift one day, and the fire got into the duct, the extraction duct, and it was so hot they couldn't put the fire out with hoses and fire extinguishers. They had a good fire drill. Everybody evacuated, and that all went well. So no employees were hurt as a result of the fire. But they couldn't control this fire. The other thing that happened was this building construction with the polystyrene in the wall construction started to melt and started to turn on fire. So there's lots of black smoke. The fire brigade arrived and went in to try and fight the fire. But everywhere they sprayed the water, it would hit the metal panels, it wouldn't get into the polystyrene, and they couldn't put it out. Unfortunately, I think 2 firefighters died in this fire. They'd gone in to try and fight the fire, but the building collapsed on them, and they couldn't get the firefighters out. So it was an absolute disaster. These are some pictures of a fire in a deep fat fryer, just to give you an idea of some of the, what it looks like. And this is a deep fat fryer fire that was controlled. All right, because I'll show you that picture, because a lot of the other pictures, there's not a huge amount to see of after a fire like this. This is the sort of damage that you can get from a major industrial fire. It's pretty messy, and there's not a lot to see after that. I think see any other sort of useful pictures. I mean, these industrial fires are not just your normal sort of, bonfire or house fire. The temperatures are involved are absolutely outlandish, and you can see all the steel just sort of melts, molten, and there's very little left after it. In terms of property damage, I think it was about $30 million US was the insurance claim for replacement of this facility, and the business interruption claim, which was associated with a loss of profit and increased cost of working, was in the region of $70 million. So significantly more than the actual fire damage itself. So as you can imagine, with a fire like this, if you take out the coated products part of this flow chart, it's going to have a knock-on effect throughout the rest of the business. Now, I think, off the top of my head, there was probably about 30 to 40% of chicken or raw chicken that was going through the coated products facility. Now, if you take out 30% of your coated products or your raw or fresh meat processing, that's going to have a huge impact. You can't just switch the tap off in a situation like this. You can't just tell the chickens to stop growing. Hey guys, just hold on there, stop growing because we don't need you right now. We're just going to build a new factory. If you can just wait a few months, we'll come back to you. It doesn't work like that. Some of these chickens actually they grow so fast that if they don't get slaughtered by a certain time, they have all sorts of health problems. So it's an imperative to try and keep processing the meat and find other things to do with it, or find other ways. Also, McDonald's were a little bit upset because they were saying, well, where's our nuggets? What's going to happen with our chicken McNuggets? Now, this company was meant to be keeping something like 2 months' stock in their freezers. But as I said earlier, they've been working on some development of some new products for other markets, and they've been running their McDonald's stock down because they've been using the lines to develop some other products. So they were down to maybe a month or less in terms of available stock for McDonald's. So McDonald's were very anxious because they were thinking we're going to have to stop serving our products in our restaurants. The users of other fried products were obviously asking, what are we going to do? So immediately after the fire, it was a crisis. What was the organisation going to do? Well, sometimes these crises, they're very high pressure. And I said to the CFO probably about 3 years afterwards, and he'd been right through the whole sort of business interruption process. I said to him, what would you have done differently if you'd had this time again, given what you know now? He said the first thing I would have done is I would have quit. I would never ever want to go through that experience again, and I wouldn't wish anybody to go through that experience again. The sleepless nights, the issues of dealing with customers, trying to maintain the accounts, trying to keep existing customers on, trying to organise employee issues, were just intense. So I think that was an indicator to me of how much work they had to do. Now, how did they get through this? Well, they did get through it. The business survived. And came out relatively well, but they were lucky in some ways. They just started building this factory down in France, and they had about 2 deep fryer lines, I think, or the potential to put a couple of lines in there. So they accelerated that project. They got that going as quickly as possible, built that as quickly as they could, and it probably took them. I don't know, a month or so before they could actually start cooking in there. They didn't have any staff. They hadn't recruited any staff down in France at this stage, and it takes time to educate staff and train staff and everything. So what they did is they shipped some of the staff from the UK down to France. There was a little newspaper article. Here we go. Here we go. It says, more than 100 British factory workers who saved their bosses bacon by agreeing to move to France, finally tucking into proper English fry-up yesterday. So the thing between English and French people, the English people can't stand the French food, and the French people can't stand the English food. So these were some of the issues that were overcome. So they opened up this place in France and got that running. They also found another deep fat fryer factory somewhere local and took over that and cranked as much as they could through that. Ironically, after a month or two, that burnt down as well. They had a warehouse on the site where they would store sort of empty material, sort of empty boxes and these sorts of things. So they converted that into a production line, and that was the picture we saw earlier of that production line. So that was this one here. So this factory here used to be a small warehouse, and ironically they had a fire in that one too. So fortunately they put some proper fire protection into this one, and they built some a fireproof room around it, and they were, I think, with that protection they were down for only a day or two, where they just had to clean it up. They built they then constructed another factory on another site. Now, what was kind of interesting about that was that this coated products factory was never rebuilt, and as a result, there were quite a few employees who never got their jobs back as a result of this incident. See that one? That's sort of it's not a very good shot probably for you, but it was a big site. This site was probably the size of about 5 sort of soccer fields, that kind of scale. So it was a big site. It was never rebuilt. It was turned into a car park in the end. They built in another town, probably for about 3 or 4 kilometres away. No, more than that, about 30 or 40 kilometres away. So the local employees lost their job as a result. So what we're talking about here is an incident which is sort of unexpected and has a severe impact to the supply chain within the business, and also their ability to maintain their customer base and the like. So, any questions on that? Yeah. I think, I guess one of the things that I'm keen for you guys to do is to be able to sort of link the theory that we talk about here and read in books and things to sort of real life type examples. So, so the question is, why do we bother managing business continuity? Now, these are just some sort of incidents that can occur within an organisation, and I guess there's not really any really good definitions. I mean, for business continuity, but one of them from the handbook. There's a handbook on business continuity, HB 221. Business continuity management provides the availability of processes and resources in order to ensure the continued achievement of critical objectives. Now let me ask you a question. Now, given your thoughts given what you know about that Sun Valley fire, what kind of things do you think they could have done to minimize the impact of that fire once it occurred? Has anybody got any thoughts as to what could Sun Valley have done prior to the fire to reduce the impact of the fire? I'm not saying there's probably lots of things we could have done with fire protection to prevent the fire occurring in the first place. But what types of things would they have been able to do to perhaps reduce it? Anybody thoughts? Yeah. Yeah, not too many aspects of the company in one building. Yeah. Keep the microwave area. Yeah. So we've got a bit of separation. So if you have an incident in one, it's not going to spread through to the rest. Yeah, absolutely. Any other thoughts? How else could you reduce the impact once that occurs? Thoughts? Yeah. Right. Okay. Instead of having the one factory, they could have had multiple factories, and so for critical operations, if you lose one factory, it's not going to take everything down, which is a good thought. And a lot of places actually do that. A lot of businesses spread themselves around so that they don't sort of put everything together. And your point actually raises is one of the big problems with supply chain and business continuity that businesses face across the world. There's an antagonistic sort of issue with a lot of this business continuity in that to protect ourselves, we should have maybe more than one site. But to reduce costs and to make ourselves more efficient, it's better to be in one place at one time. So we've got this conflict. And it's a bit like, think about it as like materials. If you develop a process which is very, very rigid, it can be very efficient. You can really tune it. But if one little tiny thing goes wrong, the whole thing breaks. So it's like a brittle bone, if you like. So one little movement in the wrong direction, and it snaps. If with business continuity, if you have if you build too much business continuity into your process, then you've got a lot of flexibility. You're going to be resilient to a lot of things, but then it can be kind of floppy and lazy, and as though floppy bones. So you've got to find the right balance. You've got to find enough business continuity to help make the organisation resilient, but not too much that you start making yourselves uncompetitive in the marketplace. In general, what I find is that organisations probably err on the side of too much rigidity, and as a result, when an issue occurs, it breaks the organisation quite catastrophically. One of the reasons for that is it's very easy to justify expenditure which improves efficiency and reduces cost. And by doing that, you often increase the rigidity of the process. But it's very difficult to justify business continuity plans or putting resilience into the organisation to protect, because there's no direct return that you can see. And it sort of comes back to some of the issues that we've been talking about earlier with these black swan events. We're not ready for those black swan type events that come in and break the organisation. So this is one of the challenges for us as risk managers, to highlight the vulnerabilities in processes and say, well, look, I think you've got a very efficient process here happening at Sun Valley. It's all on one site and it's all really streamlined and lean, but there's no resilience in that organisation. If you get one little thing go wrong, the whole process and flow is being destroyed. So this is what we're sort of challenged with in business continuity. What we've got here is a I'm not sure where is this. This is from HB, from the handbook 292. These are some of the some of the causes of organizational crises. Now, they're all over the place. I mean, there's lots of them, as you could imagine. Everything from white-collar crime, mismanagement, class action, lawsuits, labour disputes, defects, catastrophes, casualty, consumerism, discrimination, financial damages. So, there's all sorts of different things that can impact a business. So what we're doing with developing a business continuity plan is we're not focusing at this stage on preventing these happening. We're looking at when they do happen, or if they do happen, how are we going to respond? Right. So sort of the second part of the risk management process. We're going to assume that they happen, and what can we prepare ourselves for when they do happen? Now, another part of the risk management process, we'll be looking at actually preventing these things happening. But business continuity planning is mostly around reducing the impact of these events should they actually happen. Now, interestingly, part of the process we go through in business continuity, we may actually uncover things like, this very important machine is completely unprotected. We can protect it. So there's some recommendations can come out of that. But most of the time, we're looking at maybe improving planning or education of staff for how to respond in a crisis, so that if that crisis does occur, we can respond efficiently to it. There's some interesting things that happen when we're looking at sort of crises and when they do occur. Often people overestimate their ability to manage a crisis. It's a bit like plenty examples of people messing around with fires and things like that. They go, oh yeah, it's not a big fire, I can take care of that. I'm going to fight this fire without calling the fire brigade first. All right? So they try and fight the fire, they realise it's too big for them, and then they go and call the fire brigade, when the procedure should be you spot the fire, you call the fire brigade, then you try and do it. So don't a lot of the time people overestimate their ability to solve a situation themselves without involving anybody else. So you can get in an organisation a relatively small management team who've got a crisis looming or brewing, and they go, oh look, we can handle this ourselves. We don't need to tell the next layer of management above. Anyway, if we do, it'll make us look stupid and that we can't manage what we're doing, and we don't really want to tell them. The crisis then continues to grow, and it comes to a point they've got no option. The senior management then say, well, you should have called us before. We could have knocked this thing down very quickly. So people overestimate their ability often to manage the disaster, and then it ends up as a major crisis. One of the key things that I want to tell you is how business continuity management fits into enterprise risk management. It's almost like enterprise risk management is this umbrella of risk management processes which sort of sit across the organisation. And we've talked sort of already about risk management silos. It's got Treasury Department, it's got health and safety management. Well, business continuity is a management process, I guess, which sits underneath that enterprise risk management framework as well. Now, within business continuity management, there's different parts within business continuity management. And sometimes this is a little bit confusing with this terminology. So be careful, with your terminology when you're talking business continuity, because there's also business continuity planning, right? And you might hear the term business continuity plans, and they sit underneath business continuity management. Now, some of the things that sit within business continuity management is emergency management, crisis management, and the business continuity planning. Now, within business continuity planning, we've got impact analysis and risk assessment. So what are each part of these? What's it all about? Well, emergency management you'll probably be familiar with. It's things like associated with flashing lights. That's probably the easiest way to remember it. So it's mostly about life safety, emergencies. If there's a fire evacuation, well, that would be an emergency plan. If there's a chemical spill, that would be an emergency plan. If there's, say, a bomb threat cause, that's part of your emergency planning process. So it's generally tactical emergency planning, and it probably lasts, in most organisations sort of a day, within a day, or until the flashing lights have gone away. That's just that's where your emergency plan is developed for. Crisis management, that's more associated with strategic management of an incident. And a crisis could be anything from a story hitting the press, or a hostile takeover bid to the organisation. It could be some other sort of situation which is impacting reputation. So with a crisis, it doesn't necessarily have to be associated with an explosion or a fire or some kind of, sort of incident like that. It could be, a management error of some sort, or a poor judgment, which is then resulting in a crisis. Now, crisis management plans are generally for senior management level. These are the guys who are going to be sitting in a room, talking with their public relations team, going, we've got to put a press release out about this. We've got to put some information out to the stock exchange. We've got to decide how we're going to handle this incident. So it's generally a strategic management process, the crisis management plan. Now, the business continuity planning part of the process is probably a little more operational. So what we're looking at there is, okay, what are the critical processes within the organisation, and how vulnerable are those critical processes? Now, the way we do that is, firstly, we do a risk assessment across usually a department or across the business, and we look at what are the risks associated, or the risks that could impact the normal functioning of the processes. So that might be sort of things, we identify things like IT outage, loss of key staff. Other risks might be loss of critical equipment. It might be sort of severe weather incidents, anything that prevents the processes from working. And now, often when we do these risk assessments, we get in all the different people from different parts of the organisation to do sort of a workshop around this. So, okay, our objective is to keep our processes running smoothly. So when we go through the risk management process, we talk about context, okay, getting the processes running smoothly. The risks, what could affect us maintaining those processes? So it's very much a sort of process-focused risk assessment that goes on in the risk assessment in business continuity planning. We're looking at processes. It's all process-driven. Now, the impact analysis is associated with how critical business processes could be affected. Maybe in terms of how long could we operate for without this process. Right? So to give you an example, if you're working in, say, that chicken factory, how long could the business operate without the hatchery? Right? Would it be hours, or would it be days, or would it be weeks? Could we continue the operation? So what would be the impact of the business associated with losing the hatchery part or the hatchery process or that type of thing. So we've identified critical business processes, and we look at the maximum allowable outages and things like that. So this all sort of fits together under business continuity management. Now, just to sort of reiterate the fact that of sort of linking all this together, we've talked previously about how we can do an executive risk team risk assessment, and we can do strategy. Maybe they have their risk teams associated with their critical processes or their critical objectives. Sorry, that's part of enterprise risk. But with business continuity planning, we can get in and look at or develop a business continuity plan for each of these departments. So for each department, we look at what their critical processes are and how vulnerable they are. So there's often a business continuity plan, that's BCP, associated with the operational areas of each of the businesses. So each of these operational areas have got their processes, and we're interested in that. Now the executive team, they do have some sort of processes, but generally we can maybe put together a small business continuity plan for things like getting board papers put together and other executive sort of processes. But generally their role with business continuity management is with crisis management. These are the guys who are going to be making the strategic decisions as to how to interface with stakeholders. So that sort of gives you a bit of a sort of feel. But it all does connect quite well with the enterprise risk management approach, and you'll find that organisations who've got a high level of maturity of enterprise risk, you'll see that they'll be looking at strategic or operational risks, and also they'll be looking at business continuity planning for each of their departments as well. Now there's a few different approaches that we can take with business continuity planning. There's some standards around. I'm not sort of just focusing today on one particular standard. It's more sort of the concept of business continuity planning. But if you're working in an organisation and you're about to prepare a business continuity framework or management framework, then it's definitely worth looking at a standard. For Australia, definitely look at HB, the handbook for that, and it follows a sort of a general sort of flow: risk and vulnerability analysis, business impact analysis, response strategies, resource and interdependency, continuity plans, communication, training, activation and deployment. So I just put this slide up really so that you can compare that the concept is same. PAS, I think, is the UK. In the UK, understand your business, strategies, develop and implement a response, embed that within the organisation. The Americans often tend to like to make things quite prescriptive and quite detailed, and they have a much longer standard for their standards. But I guess the key message is that it's about processes. We're looking at business processes with business continuity, and we're looking at the vulnerability of those processes to interruption. What could cause those interruptions, and then what would be the effect of those interruptions, and how long can we cope with those interruptions? So it's a time-based thing as well as a sort of impact effect as well. Okay, let's take a 10-minute break. Let's get back at 7:05, and we'll carry on. And okay. Is there anyone from Group 17 here? Team 17 for assignment 1. Anybody here from 17? No? Let me tell you. This was the one for the Metro, improving the Metro. Metro plans to improve its public satisfaction. No? Nobody here? No? I'll ask again when a few people have come back. Okay. Okay, let's get going. Just when now a few of you come back. Is there anybody from Team 17 who did assignment 1, who did assignment 1 on Metro plans to improve public satisfaction here? Okay. All right. I'll talk about that later. All right. Now we were looking at business continuity, different approaches. So there's many sort of different approaches in the stand. It doesn't mean any of them are right or any of them are wrong. And I think this sort of is one thing that is probably maybe a little bit challenging for this unit, is that there's lots of ways of doing enterprise risk management, and it's not this is the right way and this is the wrong way. It's about understanding the differences between them and the subtleties between them, and maybe the underlying concept of what we're trying to do. And that's why, you know, there's lots of readings to try and help you understand the breadth of this. And this is what I'm trying to sort of convey to you. It's not like we're just learning an accounting concept and this is the way to do it because that's what the rules say. You know, there's lots of different standards here, and be aware of them, but the concept is that we look at business processes, and we look at maximum allowable outages, and we look at the impacts that those processes can have on the business if they're lost. So this is about the concept, really. What are we protecting against? You know, this is the risks that can impact the business and impact the business processes. What are we protecting in terms of the business impact analysis? The capability to protect with business continuity management. You know, sometimes business continuity management can't save us or help us. We've got to look at something more strategic, like changing the markets that we work in, or those types of things. Then we look at risk treatment. So this might be, we'll build a firewall around the defroster unit, or business continuity plans, which is associated with if this part of the facility goes down, then we've got an agreement set up with maybe a competitor. Then we do some toll production and get our products out that way. Now I'll give you, going back to that example with Sun Valley Poultry, there was actually a competitor working, I think in Belgium or Germany, making chicken McNuggets for Germany or for Belgium, a relatively small factory, and competitor to Sun Valley Poultry. However, what happened after the disaster is Sun Valley Poultry went across, using McDonald's actually to create this meeting, and said to this other factory, can you help us make some chicken McNuggets for us, which will be Sun Valley chicken McNuggets, and we'll sell them onto McDonald's. So they'll be coming out. There'll be chicken McNuggets for the contract of Sun Valley. Now, of course, the company says, sure, we can do that, but it's going to cost you. So there's a premium price because they'll be sort of making products for their competitors. And this is known as toll production, TOLL production, where a competitor is, or another company is making products for you, which you could normally make yourself, but they're making them, at a significant cost. Now, the advantage of this toll production, although it's going to cost you probably more money even than you would actually recoup from the sales of those products, what it does do is it allows you to maintain your market share. It allows you to maintain the contracts that you're tied to in terms of production. So some business continuity plans with organizations are that they have a sort of agreements with their competitors such that, if their factory shuts down, their competitors will help them out, and often these are reciprocal. So these things can exist around the world in this toll production type of environment. So there are sort of ways around these issues. How to protect resource availability and process treatments and the like. So this is just a sort of a concept that we're working on. This one here. Here we go. Just sort of breaking down one of the slides, I think from earlier. Commencement. I mean, one of the first things associated with business continuity is management may not even be aware of what business continuity is. So we have to teach people about what we're trying to do here. There is a tendency for some senior management guys to sort of say, yeah, we're tough guys, give us a challenge, yeah, we'll be right, we'll just sort it out as it comes. It's a bit sort of a she'll be right, mate type of approach. So you've got to kind of get over this. Somehow you've got to convince people to go, okay, in some situations, maybe in a lot of situations, you can probably sort of muddle your way through. But there may be situations where you can't. The other thing is, there's situations where you can muddle yourself through, but if you spend a bit of effort, maybe a little bit of money ahead of time, you can just sail straight through those storms where, other people might be really struggling, and you can just sail straight on through. There was a classic case with, I think it was I want to say, one of the hurricanes, whether it was Hurricane Katrina, and there was a big silicon chip fabrication plant in America that made a lot of chips for mobile phones. And there was Ericsson and Nokia, both using these chips coming from this one factory. And this factory basically got destroyed in the hurricane. And one of these phone companies, I think it was Nokia, had some business continuity plans in place, and they had already found out all the other chip fabrication plants that could make something equivalent, and have worked out where they could source alternative chips from for their phones. The other company hadn't, and within a day, I think the company that had got the plans in place have pretty much taken all the excess capacity from all the other facilities for themselves. So I think Ericsson was the one that hadn't, and as a result, lost huge amounts of market share following this incident. So having a business continuity plan can significantly help your business. Not just protect it, you can actually grab market share from your competitors if they're all facing the same issue. So commencement and awareness is obviously a great thing. Commitment, senior management commitment, it goes along the lines with all of these risk management processes. That's always probably the number one thing that we want, senior management commitment. Risk and vulnerability analysis, what could impact our organisation, so we've got awareness of what the risks are. If we at least understand the risk, then we can continue in the process. The business impact assessment. I guess the business impact is about identifying the weak links in our process, where we're vulnerable, those bottlenecks perhaps. In one organisation worked with, they have. They had a phone system. It had a very special phone system which had call recording on it, and so they needed to do these trades, and they needed to record all these phone calls, and they recognised that they thought they could just get up, go to another office, and set themselves up in another office in no time at all and continue trading. But then we looked into how long it would take to get this phone recording stuff set up, and the lead time to replace the phone recording stuff was in the region of 3 months. So, they probably could have cobbled something together, but it was an awareness of these limitations that then got them to think about this a little bit more carefully, and eventually did some research and came up, eventually after quite a long time, came up with an alternative solution for the recovery centre of how to work around not having phone voice recording for them. So it's these sorts of vulnerabilities that the vulnerability assessment analysis comes up with. It's you speak to different departments in the organisation. You speak to the traders, and you say, well, how long can you operate, without your computers and without your phones, and those sorts of things, and they'll say, well, what we do is like really critical. We can't operate for more than an hour, maybe. If we're not trading, we're losing opportunities. If we haven't got access to computer systems, we can't do the settlements of paying the money to the different counterparties that we're dealing with. So for them, the maximum allowable outage, is sort of minutes, hours, within a day. You go and talk to the marketing department, perhaps, and you say to them, okay, how long can you, do without your email systems or work from home? And they say, well, generally our projects are fairly long, so we could probably work from home, for a week or two. It's probably not going to be a significant impact to us. So their maximum allowable outage for their systems and computers and documents or whatever it is significantly longer. So it's all associated with the process that you're doing, and the criticality of that. Now, also associated with the criticality, it may be a very critical process, but it may not have a lot of impact on the business. So we're also looking at the impact on the business too. Now, what else? Response strategy. What are we going to do in the event of an issue? It's fairly straightforward. Resources, interdependencies. Interdependencies are probably a key one, in that there may be several departments or several business processes that rely on the same systems. A lot of businesses now are using enterprise or ERP systems like SAP, Oracle, PeopleSoft, those types of systems. And these are, across the whole organisation. Everybody within the organisation interfaces with these ERP systems. And so if those ERP systems go down, it's not just one department that's affected, it's the whole organisation. So those interdependencies we need to sort of flush out as well as part of the process. Plan documentation, fairly sort of straightforward. One of the things to note with that is, in practice, simple is probably better. There's some sort of consultants who go around and produce reams and reams of detailed information on your vulnerabilities and process mapping and the like. But in practice, when the building's smouldering, you need some plan which is simple, easy to read, because you're going to have to make some quick, fast, good decisions. And so you don't want to be sort of leafing through reams and reams of detailed information, just looking to find out, where we should be spending the limited resources. So in terms of documentation, it needs to be small documentation. The other thing is that documentation needs to be owned by the people who own the business process. So they can look at the accuracy, the relevance of that information. It may be that includes phone numbers of who to contact. It may be things like contacts of customers you deal with on a regular basis. It may be co-workers. It may be suppliers that you deal with. All those sorts of people are going to need to be contacted very quickly should a situation occur, and those numbers need to be up to date. So in terms of documentation, keep it simple, make sure it's owned by the people that own the process, and make sure it's easy to update, because if it's not updated, well, it's not really worth having. So that's something about documentation. In terms of response and communication in large organisation or any organisation is critical during these sort of crises or incidents. You want to make sure that a lot of the communication perhaps is funneled through a central point, so that all employees get the same story. All customers get the same story. You don't have these sort of bits of information which say, I heard from so-and-so that this has happened, or I heard that the building's going to be going to be shut down for 6 months, and somebody else says, I heard it was going to be back in there tomorrow, and you get all this sort of hearsay going on. So communication is very important across the organisation. If you've got a lot of staff, maybe to relocate to another place, or perhaps you've got to keep them working from home, they need to be updated on the situation and what systems are coming back up, when they're coming back up, when they could be back into the building, those types of things. So communication is key, and then maintenance of the whole process, or the whole process is important. Building business processes change, so we're usually looking at least once a year to review and update. Okay. In terms of sort of some of the common things that cause risks within businesses, computer systems are probably one of the biggest sort of risk issues for most systems, or for most businesses now. We talk about the SAP, ERP systems, but there's other sort of risk issues. And I mean, let's take an example of a business process which is perhaps close to your heart. If I was to say to you, okay, we're looking at a business process, it's the preparation of assignments, say. Okay. All right. So if you imagine, that process is, I don't know, what would you describe as the business? Anybody got any thoughts on what's the process associated with writing assignment? Anybody? Painful. Yeah, very painful. Yeah, yeah. Right. Okay. So the process is first about planning the assignment, when it's got to be due, what activities do you have to do during that time, and then I guess other parts of the assignment writing process would be doing your research, would be writing the paper, preparing it, putting it onto DSO. This is all part of the process of delivering an assignment. Now, given the process, what are the risks associated with the process? Our objective is to deliver a fantastic assignment on time. What are the risks? Anybody got any thoughts? What could affect you not achieving your objectives? Laptop crash, computer crash, hardware crash. Yeah. DSO could be down. That's right. Yeah, we all know about that one. Yeah. So laptop down, DSO down. Anything else? Yeah. Things outside your control. Yeah. Yeah, doing the research. You go to the library's shut down. You can't get, the internet's not down. You can't go and do your research. These sorts of outages. You could, end up in hospital or something. Incapacitated. Or get the flu, and you can't. Sorry? You get a doctor's note for that. But you might still have to do it later. So it's it sort of delays the process. So these are some of the sort of risk issues associated with the process of delivering an assignment. Now, in terms of the impact, we've always touched on it. You get sick, and that's going to impact us. But you could probably still do the assignment later on. If think of some other sort of outages. If the library is down, is that going to affect you? Well, it may affect you. Depends how long the library's out for. If your computer's crashed, do you keep backups of what you've stored on your computer? How long is it going to take you to get that back up and running, to get it back in on time and meet the deadlines? So it's about how long are the potential outages associated with these impacts or potential risks. One thing about I picked out assignments. It's probably not the best process to pick out, because it's a time-based one where you've got to deliver a product at a particular time. Most business processes are sort of ongoing, and they have this sort of, we're continually running the process, and we're interested in how long we can do without something for a particular time. I mean, for example, I'll give you an example. Say you're university, and you're unable to get cash out of the cash machine. All right, so you're not part of the process of just living is about get some cash and you spend your cash. How long could you spend without your cash? I mean, how long could you go before your money runs out? I mean, say the cash machines are all down. How long do you think? Use your credit card. Okay, that's your business continuity plan at work. Yeah. Okay. How about you? How long would you go without before it becomes a problem? Sorry? How long? One day, maybe? I mean, you tend to sort of maybe one day, it's a bit annoying, I've got no cash, the cash machines are out, You go 2 days, and you go, oh, this is really starting to be, a bit of a problem, and, there's things I should have done by now, but I can't because I haven't got the cash. You go up to a week, and it's like, geez, this is a real big disaster. I can't go out partying now, and so as you can imagine, it's as time ticks on, the impact increases depending on that, depending on how long that outage goes, and so when we get into doing these sort of business assessments, this is an example of a business impact analysis questionnaire. So I won't go through it. So we've got some general information. The risk assessment. This is looking at, I'm not sure what this one was now. Say, I think it was HR department. So, what power outage, the likelihood, the consequence, the controls and mitigation. You're probably all familiar with that type of stuff. Then this one's got alternative locations where you could work, evacuation procedures. And then we come down to the process analysis here. So we've got a description of the process. How often are we doing this process? Maximum allowable outage. How long could this process be out for? And what would be the impact of this outage to different aspects? So we've got financial, customer service, reputational, regulatory. So here it's like 1 is low, but as you see, as time goes on, customer service impact sort of goes from a 1 to 2, 3 to 4. So the impact changes over time, and that's the sort of the key sort of message with any of this stuff. And then it's got dependencies in here. How dependent is the process on different things, and then we get on to another process. Workarounds. What can we do to work around? Vital records, other types of information. So as you can see, it's all about the business process and how that business process can be affected in terms of impact and also time-based things. So that's really the risk and vulnerability statement. And I think we'll get you a copy of this on DSO. Yeah. Okay. A few words on disaster recovery. Now, there's a lot of confusion I find with people around disaster recovery, business continuity, emergency planning. Generally, in general, DRP, disaster recovery, is associated with computer systems. You might say to some people, "Oh, have you got a business continuity plan?" "Oh, yeah, we've got one for our computer center." If the computer center goes down, we've got this other site which we send all our backups to, and we load all these other computers up and get that up and running, and that's our disaster recovery plan. But that disaster recovery plan is not necessarily a business continuity plan. The difference is business continuity is about processes, disaster recovery is about systems. computer systems. So, business continuity plan for your assignment is about, identifying that you could be sick and those sorts of things. A disaster recovery plan is associated with making sure your laptop's got backups on, and maybe that you've got an alternative computer somewhere else that you could use, that type of thing. There's different types of disaster recovery plans that organizations set up. If you're a bank and you've got some very short time frame issues, generally what you'll see is you'll have two computers which sit in separate cities even, and they're both processing exactly the same information at exactly the same time. So if one computer system breaks down, then the other computer system can continue, and there's no interruption at all in terms of services and continuity of the services. If you're doing these sort of real-time transactions all the time, which are time critical, which a lot of financial systems are, that's the level of redundancy that needs to be built into the systems. Now, that's fantastic, but it's very expensive. So a lot of businesses say, well, we don't need that level of hot site. We want something maybe that's a little more, a little simpler, a little cheaper. And so what they may do is they may have a main data center where all their day-to-day processing goes on, and then there'll be another data center which has maybe got all the right hardware in, but is not necessarily live. It may just have yesterday's data on it, perhaps. And if something happens with the main data center, within a few hours they can liven up the backup center and get that running, and maybe they maybe have lost less than a day's worth of transactions that they try then to cobble together. Now there's a significant reduction in cost when you go to that sort of warm type setup. Now the sort of the next one down, sometimes people call it a cold site, where you've got your main data center which is running with all your transactions, and you've got another center which has just got some hardware in, and you've got your backup tapes, and you've got your application disks and the like. And if your main data center goes down, well, then you send a whole bunch of IT guys in a hurry to your backup site and load up all the latest backup tapes and the latest information that you have on these systems and get it up and running. And it may take you a little bit longer, but it's a lot cheaper to manage on an ongoing basis. So they're the sort of the three main ones. In terms of disaster recovery plans, a lot of the mistakes that people make are that they run all their backups every day onto tape, onto all these systems, but they never actually check that what's been recorded onto tape actually is the right information and can be loaded onto another system. And I've had experience where I've sort of been in organisations where we've checked the backups, and somebody's moved a major data file to another drive, and that other drive is not getting backed up. So they just keep backing up the old information on the previous drive, even though the live information is on another drive. So even if they had a disaster, their backups would be useless. So testing the backups is a key part of any disaster recovery plan. Another organisation I dealt with once, they stopped doing backups because they were running backups at night from one data center to another, and the files were so big it was taking too long. Overnight they didn't have enough time to transfer all the data on these backups, and they went to the business and said, look, we haven't got enough time, what should we do? And there was the IT guys talking all this techno-babble stuff, and the business guys just going, well, we don't really understand, but whatever you think, do whatever you think's right. So the IT guys just they stopped doing these backups, and then the system crashed, and the business guys went back to IT and said, well, why weren't you doing backups? You should have been doing backups. And the IT guys says, well, we had that meeting and you told us that we didn't have to do the backups. And go, we don't remember that. You know, there's lots of things to be careful of in these IT things. And I know if any of you have had dealings with IT departments, but often they speak another language, and it's not the same one that we speak. So yeah. Just a word on emergency management. Now, this is probably the area that you're most familiar with in terms of sort of disaster recovery or with business continuity. You know, it's the flashing lights. But within a business, you know, it covers evacuation plans, medical emergencies, fire, earthquake, windstorm, flood, terrorist threats, burglary, bomb threat, white powder threats, chemical spill, gas leak, vehicle collisions, and it's sort of the tactical response. It's about sort of saving lives, you know, most of the time. And so it's a different type of team that organises emergency management compared to maybe business continuity management, where it's all business process, or crisis management. And now crisis management is the strategic sort of perspective of business interruptions or threats to reputation. Now, generally there's two types of crises. There's what sometimes you call the cobras and the pythons. Now the cobras, if you're familiar with the cobras, they're the snakes that sort of look at you in the eyes and then get you, right? Now the pythons are the ones that sort of come up to you and they go, oh, nice and friendly, and they slowly wrap themselves around you, and before you've really thought about it, they're squeezing the hell out of you, and you just can't get away from them. So these are the two sort of different types of crises. So, I mean, an example of, I mean, most of the ones that we're familiar with often come to mind are the cobras, you know, the ones that go whack, get you. You know, BP would probably say, you know, it's a cobra, the thing that's happening out in the Gulf of Mexico. You know, they had all their plans, you know, in place, and they had an explosion. They didn't see that coming. They had a failure of a shut-off valve underwater that failed. You know, that's sort of, they didn't see that happening. So that's sort of something that comes out and whacks and bites you. And there's plenty of examples around like that. But some of the more insidious crises that organisations have had to deal with have been these pythons, these ones that sort of slowly creep up on the organisation and slowly sort of grab them and suck the lifeblood, or not suck, but slowly crush them and kill them that way. And one I guess good example of that is, again, is another oil rig story, but this one was with Shell back in the mid-90s, where the Brent Spar oil platform was finished with, and they got to get rid of it. And what's happened was they'd had lots of environmental studies done as to the best thing to do and how to get rid of it, and they've spoken to you know, environmental consultants and the maritime authorities and the different governments of around the North Sea, and they come up with a solution where they were going to basically cut it off and let it sink to the bottom of the ocean, of the North Sea, to, you know, to slowly rot away over the years. And they thought, yep, this is fantastic, and it's a pretty cheap option, and fits us. The environmental consultants and the governments and everything are pretty happy with that. But they made a mistake. They underestimated the impact of Greenpeace and some of the environmental agencies. And what happened was they suddenly found that Greenpeace had taken over sort of this oil rig, and had put their banners up there and taken photos of it, and it was hitting the press and becoming, you know, a big story. And Greenpeace was saying, look, you know, this is an environmental disaster. We've got a big oil company, and they're just polluting the water, just chopping this thing off and letting it sink. They should be, you know, they should be towing it to shore, and you know, disposing of this in a more environmentally friendly way, not just dumping it. And initially Shell thought this is a non-issue. we've got all the agreements of the governments and the environmental, permissions and permits and everything to do this. It's like we've got no problem, getting through this. But the public pressure continued to increase and increase and increase to the point where Shell was in a position where they had to tow this whole oil rig to Scandinavia and destroy it or cut it apart bit by bit, which cost them a hell of a lot of money and became a huge, great PR crisis for them. So this was an example of something that became a crisis, and one of the major things that caused it as a crisis, which is basically a management weakness. They didn't consult with a wide enough group of stakeholders and engage all the stakeholders in this two-way conversation. They thought they had the right solution and just went straight for it. They underestimated the public interest in what they were doing, and they failed to engage the appropriate communities or the appropriate stakeholders. So this was an example of something that occurred over a long period of time, but was a major crisis for them. Now, part of crisis management is the way you communicate to your stakeholders, and it's critical. There's lots of examples of poor crisis communications and sending the wrong message out to the public. And one of the sort of common mistakes that organisations make is the no comment line that they give. What do you think, Mr. CEO, about the oil crisis that you've just created? Oh, no comment. It's like, well, immediately that opens it up to speculation. You've got anybody trying to give comment as to what happened and what's going wrong. So there's all sorts of things which can make a crisis worse. And so crisis management or crisis communications can be an opportunity for either the reputation of a company to continue to go down, or it can be an opportunity for the reputation of the company to be increased. A well-managed crisis can actually be turned into an opportunity for the organisation and help them improve their relationship with the public and their stakeholders. Some of the things that I guess are most common with crisis communications is misinformation or information that comes from the wrong person in the organisation. And I would say one of the simplest things for organisations to do is make sure that all their crisis or their communications goes through one person. So there's a spokesman typically for that organisation. So if there's people leaving the factory gate, they're not talking to the press. Any requests for comment come through the corporate head office and the like. The other thing is that anybody talking to the press should generally have media training as well, and that's about understanding how the media think, the types of questions that they'll be asking. And I was talking to some media guys, and they had some of the executives he was talking to, and this executive was focused on, say, the retail part of the business, and in the interview he was asked a question about another part of the business completely separate, like the IT systems, which he wasn't familiar with at all, and completely lost the plot in the interview, so it came across really badly. So then anybody fronting the media needs to have a wide understanding of all the operations of the whole business to really sort of make the best of it. Okay. I guess just to sort of conclude, I mean, what we've talked about tonight, is just a sort of a snapshot of some of the key things in business continuity management. And a lot of business continuity courses can run for days, and we can sort of talk for days on some of these topics. But the key messages, I guess, I'd like you to take away with you is business continuity management is an umbrella across lots of different activities. So within that, you've got business continuity planning, which is your business impact assessment and your risk assessment. It's also associated with crisis management, which is the executive level type process, and also emergency planning, which is your more sort of flashing lights and life safety issues. We're looking at generally of business continuity management, identification, prevention, mitigation of business interruption, replication. So we're looking at business interruption typically. So it's about what can prevent us, doing what we do. And going back to the Sun Valley example, their business was totally interrupted. They had a very sort of tight supply chain process flow going through their organisation, and you take out one part, and it had massive ramifications across the whole organisation. In terms of reputation, if we can minimise the impact, or we can manage the impact in terms of how that interfaces with our stakeholders, then we hope that we can minimise any damage to our reputation. And as I think we mentioned before, reputation is one of those things that takes a long time to gain, but can very, very quickly be lost. So it's a key reputation management issue. So emergency management, disaster recovery, crisis management, part of business continuity management. And crisis management is not a solution for poor business practice. I think that's another key thing to be aware of. You might say, oh yeah, if we manage our business badly, things are going to go wrong, but we've got a really good PR group here, and they'll talk their way out of anything. Crisis management is not about just escaping from these things. It's not an excuse for poor management. So if we can make sure people understand that, it's about improving our management even more, or improving what we do even more. And there's a few. I think there's a few readings in the study guide for this. Definitely, hopefully after the lecture you go and have a look at the study guide and have a few, read the stuff that's in there. And I think what you'll see, will sort of, and what will bring together what you've heard tonight. See some examples of how this stuff really looks in practice. Anybody got any questions or thoughts on business continuity? How an organisation can use business continuity to improve their management of their reputation, process focus? No? Okay. Now, where are we going for time? I thought it would be an opportunity for you to take a look at. I've got your assignment 1 here. If I might hand those out now. So if you guys, probably the easiest thing to do is call out the different groups. If you can't remember what group, I'll tell you the topic perhaps, and you can come pick up your assignments. This one. Okay. Risk register for the deployment of Victorian desalination project. Does that ring any bells? Down here. Now I've got one assignment that was done that I'd like to show you guys, because it was particularly good, because I'm sure there'll be a few questions as to why you didn't perhaps score as well as you wanted. This one there. Liverpool Football Club. Ready? Right. AWB. Yeah. Not sure who this one is. ABC Company. Chinese automotive market. Shandong, new venture in Western Australia. One on electric hybrid cars. Sure what this one was. Goes down now. Rio Tinto QQM Madagascar project. ABC Cafe Melbourne City. New Jersey Nets Championship 2012. Deakin Insurance. This was one on Holden Motor Vehicles. Metro's improving plan, Team 5. Group 16. This one. Singapore Airlines. This one's another Holden again. Not sure what that one is. Yellow Earth Company. Not sure what this one is. I can't tell what that one is. Bank of the Middle East. Zhejiang Geely Automobile by the Volvo Car Company. China Western Airlines. Victorian government to increase the usage of public transport. COFCO Proprietary Limited. Yes 123. Reduce carbon emissions. Victorian Amateur Football Association. Not sure what that means. Non-EB. I don't know if that means anything to you guys. Is this part of yours as well? Yeah. Okay. All right. So, has anybody here not heard theirs call out? Okay. Come up to the front. It might be some of the ones that I can't tell which group you're in. Is it any of these? Maybe a group number? That's yours, is it? Okay. I'll just have a quick check. I think these are all the... Okay, can you get them to come down? Yeah, they're the off-campus ones. Next one. Group 17. Oh, okay, so you haven't got yours back? You got yours?
On the question, because we didn't make the PowerPoint one in paper form, we submit electronic form.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
right. Okay. Well, in that case, we'll take a look at that.
okay.
Just shut this off. Okay. Okay, everyone. Just to let you know, that's pretty much it for today. I'm happy to take any questions you've got about assignment 2. If people have got any questions about that, or assignment 1, if you've got any questions on that, so yeah, come on up. I'm happy to take them as a group or individually. But if you've got no questions, have an early night. Enjoy the evening. Okay, thanks very much.